My art, or the subject matter for my art practice, kind of just comes from walking the landscape and from walking and from moving really slowly within it. It used to always be humanistic interactions in the landscape and building and demolition, but more recently I'm really interested in waste and all of these materials that we produce that there's no output for. So my art practice is really inspired by the architectural movement of bricolage, which is building from the debris of previous events. So I like to use waste materials that are destined for landfill and kind of build something new from it. I've been working with a waste repurposing plant in the Midlands called Gananico, and they take in lots of materials that are going to be sent to landfill and find a purpose for them. So the piece here in Radical Archaeologies is No Such Thing as a Way, and it's all reused material bar the bell jar. And I kind of like museum displays for these waste pieces. It's a remnant of windscreen glass that was due for landfill, and just kind of putting it up like it's a flower or precious stone. So I'm kind of interested in showing waste in different ways. So the making process depends on the idea or the narrative that I want to tell. So I kind of think of myself as a storyteller. So I'll start with walking, drawing, taking apart the object, putting it in different places, and then you're like, which way does it need to be shown? Should this be a sculpture? Should this be a drawing? Should this be a print? So it's kind of the material and the narrative kind of dictates what form it takes. So there'll be a lot of kind of thinking within the studio. I work very slow. I'm a very slow maker, so things kind of form over time, and I have to let the ideas sediment before they become form. So Future Forests is an etching, an aquatinta, and I would describe it as a landscape piece, albeit not in a traditional sense of a romantic landscape. It is a demolished building, so drawing all the cinder blocks, bricks and rebar, and then I've placed these domestic jars. I made a diorama in my studio to draw this. So I just had old, tomatoes, passata jars or mayonnaise jars, and I put these small plant cuttings within them. So I like that there's a sense of foreboding or this kind of dystopian landscape, but there's also equally this idea of hope or of rejuvenation, of protection, I suppose, of the land and of the natural constituents of the land. It's an etching. I like using printmaking. It's a very historic medium. Etching would have been used a lot in botanical or geological surveys, if you think back to Victor de Noyer or George Seba. So it has this botanical resonance. It's also like etching into a plate that's been extracted from the land. So this copper plate has been extracted, and then I'm applying this process to it that's etching and eating away at the very surface of it. It's kind of very reminiscent of humanistic interventions. In the past, I used a lot of relief printmaking, and I still use it. I love it because it's like a populist medium, so it's for the people, by the people, so it's always ingrained in storytelling. I'm really conscious of making work at this time, in this time of ecological crisis, so that's why I make so slowly and try to make with repurposed material. I'm also very conscious of the fear and anxiety of climate change and of everything being so dark and pessimistic. So within my work, I do try I don't try, it's just it happens, that I kind of try to tell a narrative or these ideas about climate in a somewhat we can do something about it way. So it's not shouting or using megaphones or didactic, but it's kind of creating conversations around waste and land, and hopefully, instilling that hope that we can do something collectively, but also individually. So thinking about the waste that we generate, thinking about how we can reuse things, repair things, how materials with this lived experience or, that they've already had a life have such pertinence and shouldn't be discarded and should be put on somewhat of a pedestal and looked at and observed and questioned what they can do next and how that can help. So I'm delighted to be part of the Glucksman UCC collection. It's such an active collection and it moves around, and I have such a record now of the Folly series being in different libraries, in different schools, of children and people just reacting to the work. And I love the idea of the Follies traveling, because they all have this mobility attached to it, like a stack of pallets. They're used to travel. They're for freighting. The portable fairy tree, moving the ecology around. A skip that's very ephemeral, skip of trees. So I love the fact that they've been traveling around Cork, and I get to see them, and people send me photographs of them installed in libraries and schools. And it's really nice to know that they're not just sitting, stagnating, that they are out there telling stories in places that are important.